Hey, thanks for joining me. We are on issue 14 of Gen 13. This book that, for me, varies wildly in interest and rereadability. Again, at the time when it was out, I kind of thought that it was interesting, and there were moments where it's just brilliant and it works really well. And there's other times where you're just like, ugh. Well, I guess I should say, in retrospect, years later, I have to say it does not hold up. I think I say this all the time. I think the characters are reasonably interesting, but only the good guys, only the main heroes. They're interesting enough, but the villains, the stories, it's just kind of cliche stuff. But man, it was so popular. It spawned like all kinds of one offs and sequels. And like this was a surprise hit. And I say every time it hinges on J. Scott Campbell's art. And as soon as he's not drawing it, it just dries up. It's not a fraction as interesting. So, issue 14, you get this great drawing from Campbell, who, as always, knows exactly what he's doing. There's Roxy going to school in her little unnecessarily hyper sexy little, like, schoolgirl outfit, showing a lot of thigh and, knee high socks or whatever, the pencil in her mouth, off to college. Great drawing, lots of body language, lots of character, very interesting, very cool. But, oh yeah, as is the case with a certain era of Wildstorm books, you have to flip to the back page to see the credits. So, story is Brandon Choi, J. Scott Campbell, and Jim Lee. Brandon Choi, barf. Jim Lee, barf. J. Scott Campbell is the only one bringing life to it. Pencils are Luke Ross, and inks are Sandra Hope. So, when this come out, I was like, oh, it's not Campbell. Like, you don't get every issue with him. So who's this Luke Ross guy? And even now, I'm like, I know the name, but I don't know if I can't speak on where I know I've seen his name at or where I've seen his work. Having flipped through this issue again for the first time in years, I gotta say the guy's pretty damn good. He kind of has a balance of artwork that kind of falls somewhere in between a J. Scott Campbell clone and a Jim Lee clone, which is not a bad place to be. Ultimately, it kind of comes down to is his storytelling clear? And yes, it is. He can tell a story. He can draw detailed backgrounds. He can do pretty decent body language. I was actually really impressed with how good he actually is. He doesn't have that special it factor that Campbell does. He's close, but it's just not quite there in the same way. And, this is a big it's a big set of shoes to fill, but I got to be honest, he did pretty dang good. It's just that the story, I appreciate that in this thing, it's all kind of like talking about the real world lives of the characters, which oftentimes is the more interesting stuff. But it's just about the kids going off to college. And so it kind of becomes like a silly kind of like teen comedy comic. And I guess it's fine. It was probably more interesting to me when I was a lot younger when this come out, but reading it now, it's kind of struggled to hold my interest. And of course, I've talked about this where it's just covered in text, explaining stuff that you could get by explaining very little and just let the visuals explain to you. But basically, this is Caitlin Fairchild's father and talking about he spent all his life on the run and estranged from his family, but now he's met up with his daughter, so he's living with him. So he's on the beach doing Tai Chi to help clear his mind. And this text in this thing is so boring to read. It's so cliche. It sucks. Then he cut to an alarm clock, and there's Grunge waking his dumbass up in his bed. The amount of detail to make it look like a slob of a kid, especially a guy, his room, like there's posters and all over the place. There's empty food boxes and clothing, just all kinds of debris all over it. It's a good drawing. Like there's a lot of life in the backgrounds, and it works really well. He's got to get his ass up, and they're talking to, he's talking with, they have a android house servant, a maid, whatever. Anna is her name. She's like a robot. It gets to it. It's a little weird. Then you cut to Caitlin Fairchild. She's up, she's dressed, she's combing her hair, and they have kind of conversation back and forth. Of course, grunge is kind of a typical guys out of bed late, and Caitlin's up early, going since 6 a.m. and ready to go. We cut to Burnout trying to get into the shower and runs into Rainmaker, and they keep having this like Rainmaker, they outed her as a lesbian, that she's into girls, but there's this constant vague flirting between her and Burnout. And of course, she's walking around in the sexiest underwear outfit that you could ever possibly imagine her to be in, which I kind of don't think would be real, because I don't think she's interested in him because she's supposed to be into girls. But then why is she strutting around like this? She'd be in a robe or something like that. So it's just kind of like thrown in there for the kind of goofy, lighthearted sexualization of the characters to kind of keep us interested. And it's a good drawing. Like, she looks hot. But again, as an older me reading these, just kind of like, this is kind of silly. And of course, it gets Burnout so hot and bothered, he starts like sparking up his heat powers because he's getting all hot and bothered. She's like, you're going to be the one who needs a cold shower. Okay, thanks. Back with Roxy. Of course, she's in her room. I like how there's 3 panels spread across here, but it's just one shot of her bedroom. And again, the details in the bedroom. The bed, the pillows, the posters, little animals, the little, just various little knick-knacky things all over her room. Make it feel like a lived-in environment. And they got her changing different clothes. I mean, I could see Campbell doing this type of stuff. And again, credit to Luke Ross. Like, all these outfits, all these poses, it looks good. There she is in the kind of the final outfit that she's in on the cover. So the art's good. In fact, the kind of like average reader might not even know that this isn't Campbell if they're not paying attention. But again, it's good. It's just kind of not, it's not Campbell. And then you go back to Lynch, and of course he's doing Lynch stuff. He's sitting around, he's being mysterious. There's a lot of talk about missing people going on. He's, watching news reports about various national headlines. He's talking to the android girl. She's like, are you going to be doing this and that and the other? He's like, no, I got a bunch of stuff to do, so I need you to take the kids to school. So you get this bottom panel here to show the speedy android zipping really fast, like cleaning up the kitchen and making it ready for breakfast for the kids, which of course, once the kids show up, they make a mess of everything. And it just pisses her off, so she's in the corner kind of like fuming. And they get into the dietary habits of all the characters. Like, for real, Grunge is eating like day-old pizza and Diet Coke, and Burnout's eating power bars, and Roxy's on like a thin fast, like a protein shake, and Rainmaker's talking about, oh, you guys shouldn't be eating all these, eggs and sausages and hash browns. There's so much fat and cholesterol. I haven't even talked about the pesticides and artificial hormones and blah, 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 blah. So it's a whole conversation about eating food. Okay, she's like, yeah, Rainmaker's like, you all be much better off eating a healthy diet of grains and fruit. Grains is not a good idea. Anyway, it's fine. It's getting into the real world kind of life of these characters, which I've advocated for. It's like, sometimes this stuff is more interesting than them punching faceless robots or whatever, but I don't know. It's just, okay. Anyway, now we're off to college. Here we go. They're all standing there. They're all in their kind of cool teen outfits. And they all kind of go off in their own directions and run into various characters at this college. So it starts to feel like a teen kind of high school or college comedy. And I guess that's fine. It's not that interesting though. And it's not the concept that I don't find interesting. It's just kind of the execution. It's just okay. Roxy's going up some stairs and kind of accidentally runs into a dude, and she falls and knocks all her books to the ground. And of course, a handsome fella shows up, and he's like, hey, babe, can I help you pick your shit up? And hey, it looks like I see your books. It looks like we're headed to the same film class. So they show up to the film class, and they make note of how all the students in the film class, they all look kind of like a bunch of dark-eyed, pale kind of shut-ins. And he's like, well, yeah, it's a film class. What else would you expect? I mean, I guess that's funny. It's kind of a joke. And then, of course, we get a couple of, like, brainless, vapid bimbos talking about, oh, we got to recruit some people to our fraternity. And all these other girls are just so, ew, they're so gross. This one girl, look at Tiffany. She's got cottage cheese thighs. Ew. But then they see Fairchild coming down the way, and they look at her, and they notice that all the dudes that are behind her are just tripping over themselves at how hot she is. And they're like, oh my God, she's so fine. We have to totally get her involved into our Kappa Lambda Tau. You're going to be one of our sisters. She's like, oh, okay, maybe that'll be fun. And then we cut over to, it's grunge and burnout. Yeah, and they're trying to get into this guy fraternity, and it's such stereotypical, like, jock douchebag stuff, which I get. They're like, hey, here comes some fresh meat. And they're like, maybe they meant freshmen. But then you get all these jock douchebags all scowling and looking like a bunch of chud assholes. They're like, they're looking a mite scrawny this year. This guy says, is that one on the left a kid, or is he some kind of midget? This guy says more like a circus freak, if you ask me. And some guy off to the side that doesn't indicate who's saying it, he says, but he's got himself a purty little mouth. I'm reading this going, what the hell? So then I guess the leader of the male fraternity here, he's like, out of the way. I'm the pledge master for the class. And they're like, yeah, relax, Needlemeister. Nobody's touched him yet. Needlemeister? Like, really? You're like, and that's the way it's going to stay. Their butts are mine. And this guy says, better hurry. I think the gimp's got his eye on the dwarf. And, of course, Burnout's like, grunge, can I go home now? I get like, this is, it's like the dumbest jokes. It doesn't read that funny to me at all. So then we cut over to, I thought that this was, oh no, it's not Burnout. I'm sorry, I screwed up. It's some other guy that knows grunge. I missed that part somehow. Doesn't really say, because grunge is just there, and then he shows up, and there's a guy who's with them. I just kind of assumed it was Burnout. Like you can tell, obviously, the story was not keeping my attention that well, because it was kind of hard to read. This was a slog to get through in terms of story. Here we run into Burnout, and he's at some coffee house, and he runs into some hot girl with a bandana and a guitar, and of course he's just smitten with her, so they talk music and coffee and oh so cool stuff. And she invites him to come to this fall festival thing, and I'll invite you to see the girls, and you can maybe join in our little, our band jam session. He's like, holy crap, that'd be awesome. So, okay. And then now we're back with, like, the college kids having, like, they're getting together trying to, like, get people to kind of sign up petitions that the biology department won't use animals for scientific experiments. This is where Rainmaker's at, and Grunge and his dumb crew of guys show up, and they kind of end up clashing against each other. So Grunge is with a group of jock douchebag dudes, and they treat Rainmaker like shit, so she's pissed off. So Grunge is kind of being a dick. Again, it's just college humor stuff. Grunge runs it back into Fairchild, and they're kind of shocked because they're going into biology class. She's like, shouldn't you be in woodshop or something? Is there woodshop in college? I don't know. I never went. He's like, no, I got signed up for neurology 301. Sounds bitchin'. And Kaylin's like, dude, this is a serious class. Like, this is hard. You're a fucking idiot. You're not going to do well in this. He's like, whatever. And he sees a bunch of hot girls smiling at him. He's like, oh, there's my lab partners. So Grunge borrows one of her books and just kind of flips through it. And now the professor starts yapping, going on and on. He's like, can someone tell me what a neurotransmitter is? And Grunge is like, I could tell you. And of course, the professor is like, oh, sure. Why don't you dazzle us with your scintillating knowledge? And Grunge, The question is, what is a neurotransmitter? Grunge says it's like this chemical agent that's released by a neuron at the end of its axon, which diffuses across the synaptic gap and then acts upon a postsynaptic neuron, muscle, or gland. And Fairchild's like, what the fuck? And the professor's like, I'm impressed. What's your name? He, gives his name. And basically Grunge says that he's got a photographic memory. So he just flipped through her book, happened to see the one part, I guess, the professor was going to ask about, and then he could just regurgitate that information. It was kind of a funny little character moment. There's a difference between being able to regurgitate knowledge and having wisdom or understanding, but he read it and he could recite what the answer is. Doesn't mean he understands it, but it's an interesting kind of character trait to throw to Grunge, that he's got a completely photographic memory. So I guess that's interesting. Back into the island of Gomorrah, and here's some shadowy characters going into a bar. They get tough and attitudey with the guy sitting at the bar. They want to know where Alex Fairchild is, the guy at the beginning of the book doing Tai Chi. And then they all leave, and they're shadowy figures, and they're like, hey, keep your mouth shut. Don't tell anybody we were here. So I guess we're supposed to wonder who these guys are. Based on the visuals, especially with the bandana, I'm like, is that Death Blow? Maybe this is Backlash. Maybe that's Jackson Dane. No, Jackson Dane, the leader of Wetworks. I'm just guessing. It's not a bad splash page, especially having them all in silhouette like that to keep the mystery, but just give you just enough of like, maybe we know who they are, because we have to build towards the action adventure eventually. And then the kids all get back together, I guess later at camp, later on the day on the campus, and Roxy's kind of bonding with the guy in film class, and they're all getting together, and they're just kind of sharing their experiences throughout the day. It's a lot of words, and the thing is that Brandon Choi and Jim Lee do not know how to write an interesting story. They're really trying, but it feels dated and kind of stupid. In the hands of a better writer, give this to Alan Moore. Oh my God, would this be interesting? But J. Scott Campbell's he's listed as at least partial story credit, so he's trying to steer the book in an interesting direction. But they just get together and kind of have conversations back and forth about their day, and then they're back at a table, and they all kind of end up having some conflicts about different points of view, different opinions, and how they have to learn to kind of accept each other's different points of view and opinions. Sure. And then they just kind of leaves them silently sitting at a table. And Lynch is basically like, well, I see we've got a long way to go. And then, of course, Grunge burps, which breaks the tension, and everyone laughs because I guess it's funny. So again, they're trying to do characterization. I've talked about before how I'm like, sometimes this book, when it's just action and fighting against characters we don't give a shit about, it's boring. The character stuff is the more interesting stuff. Well, here it is, and I'm not having that much fun with it either. It's not that great. Again, it's pretty good art. It's almost as close to a Campbell as you could get. Great expressions, great backgrounds. It's Sandra Hope on inks, and she's an incredible inker. She was doing great work here. So it's kind of fine, I guess. Later on, they're all sitting around watching TV, and they're throwing pillows at each other, and it's cute, and they're kind of, the conflict that they had at the dinner table is kind of past. They're lightening up, and they're showing that they're still friends. And then meanwhile, some random college chick, she's crossing the street, a bunch of bright headlights kind of flash her and blind her, so I guess she freaks out and drops her books. And then some weird booga booga weird creature thing jumps out, knocks her out. They throw her in a car, and she wakes up in some room, and she recognizes that all these people here are people who have disappeared recently, which they alluded to earlier in the book. And the weird booga booga guy puts a mask on her. She screams, and this is the lead up to whatever the mystery is going to be about, whatever these weird creatures are and whatever the hell they're doing, to go into the next issue. And then there was a contest for people to dress up as Gen 13 characters. It's kind of fun. it kind of gets into how popular this book was. And then here's some of the characters for a 1996 Halloween party. J. Scott Campbell is Indiana Jones. There's Jim Lee as Snow Leopard. I don't know who that is. Mike Heisler as Deathblow. Kaiki Campbell as, I don't even know what that name is. And Monica Bennett as Girl Scout. Guy as Lynch. A girl as Ladytron. That's fun. They're all kind of having a good time. And then I was looking at this page over here, selling original Brett Booth art. Man, if his art was this price today, I would have picked up a page or two if I had money that I have now, which I did not then. I mean, a $200 page, I could swing that to get an original Brett Booth Spider-Man Backlash page, $175, $225. This double page spread is $800. Now that's a lot of money, but I mean, that's not bad. I bet you prices today would be a lot more than this. It's just interesting that at the time they were selling these pages for that. And at the time it seemed like a lot, but some of the price for original art these days, yeah, I would love to have picked one of those up. That would have been awesome. But anyway, Gen 13, number 14. It's okay. I feel like they're trying, but when you got Jim Lee and Brendan Choi on writing duties, and then, again, credit to Luke Ross. He did a really good job. It's just he doesn't have that Campbell factor. And so it's just a little bit less interesting. So, not horrible by any means, but not great. It's just kind of dated and a little silly. It doesn't really hold up, but it's okay. So that's all I got for this one. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. See you next time.